Jazzcast Pros.
This episode is all about your relationship with money. I have 6 tips for you to take into your daily life as soon as you finish listening to this episode about money that will change your relationship with money. And so we are going to dive in. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the current or aspiring solopreneur, navigate the messy middle so you can make both an income and an impact. Hi, I'm Rashawn, and I love creating safe spaces for women to be courageous in their dreams. After spending a decade working in sales for a startup and talking with hundreds of other women entrepreneurs, I know it can be lonely, but you can do this. We are having impactful conversations with people walking similar paths to you, so pull up a seat. This is High Vibe Table Talks. This episode, we are going to be talking about something that people tend to stay away from. They don't like to talk about. And I think it is so important. First off, this episode, as I get into it, might feel a little woo-woo. And we are in the season of when the woo wears off. But I think that this is really important because it's something that we can work really hard at honing in on our relationship with. And then we're like, okay, I'm good. And then as we dig into our business, or we level up, or, makes any sort of evolution, we can regress. And so this is a check-in to say, what is your relationship with this right now? The second thing is that I am very heavy into sales content right now. I think, obviously, if you don't sell, you don't have a business. And this sort of mindset stuff will stop you from selling or making the sales that you want to make. So let me start by saying where I was in my relationship with money and then where I am now. Growing up, my dad was in corporate America, moving up the ladder. He provided for our family. He did really well for himself. And my mom was a social worker. And so she worked for Alternatives for Battered Women. She worked in jails. And she just really came from such a space of service. And when the third child of the family, I'm the oldest, was born, the daycare for 3 of us to go cost more than my mom was making. And so my parents had to make a shift. As far as my mom, she started working the C shift. So my dad would work 9 to 5, come home, and then my mom would go to work and work overnights. So as I was really dissecting my relationship with money, I realized that I had these very mutually exclusive ideas of what it meant to make money. You can either make an income, like my dad made a good income for our family, or you can make an impact. My mom, being a social worker, made a big impact on a lot of people's lives. And those things were mutually exclusive. And so I have had to work through that money story. And, that's why now it's a real pillar of my business is I want to help women make an income and an impact. I love working with heart-centered entrepreneurs who see the impact they can have on the world, maybe feel a little awkward around the money stuff. But if we talk about it and change our stories, change the narrative around money, I really think we can create this really powerful force of women making an income and an impact. So that's kind of where I was with money. In tip number 2, I will get into where my mindset is with money right now. And part of why I'm making this, and I really think it is impactful for this season of when the woo wears off, is because I had a really strong relationship with money for a while. And I have realized that I have regressed. I was driving this was, 6 or 8 months ago. I was driving in the town and was driving by a Lowe's. And it was if you need a roof repair, Lowe's does it with monthly payments or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, if our roof collapsed tomorrow, I have no money to pay for it. And we have nothing wrong with our roof. We have had zero signs that something is wrong with our roof. But I immediately went into scarcity mode, and I started to notice the stories that were playing in my head around money, and they were very much in scarcity, not having enough, scrambling. And I want all parts of my life to be in abundance. I want to have an abundance mindset, and that doesn't just mean in business or with family. I think that these are all muscles that we use, and you have to practice using them in all areas of your life because they do bleed into each other. And so if I'm in a scarcity mindset with my business, I'm going to have a scarcity mindset around money, and I'm going to have a scarcity mindset with my daughter and my friends and boundaries and all of the, in so many episodes, we have talked about these relationships that we have with these kind of ambiguous things. And having a scarcity relationship is not the space that I want to be in. And so when I realized that, I took a step back and say, okay, I need to reassess my current practices with my abundance mindset and start showing up in that abundance mindset in all aspects. And money really was one of the first kind of like ambiguous relationships that I decided to dive into. Okay, so there are a lot of stories that get told to us about money, and they get ingrained from a very young age. And one of the things that like Jen Sincero talks about is it's not your fault if you're fucked up. It's your fault if you stay fucked up. And I think that the discussion around money is a great example of it's not your fault that you live in a patriarchal society, that your parents were always fighting about money, that as you were eating dinner, it was always talked about how greedy this person was. And so that you associated money with greed. Like those things are not your fault. But here we are in our adulthood as solopreneurs, as parents. It's something that I am cognizant of talking about money in front of my daughter, especially because, and I can get into this in a little bit, is that like my husband and I have very different relationships with money. And so it's something that we have to be cognizant of. So it's not your fault that those were the stories of your childhood. Now, as adults, as parents, as solopreneurs, as entrepreneurs, as people trying to grow something, if you don't evolve from those, that is on you. So how can we change that? What practices can we put into place so that your story with money is no longer fucked up? Even our mindset around debt. I was having this conversation. So in my community, I used to do it every week. Now it's more like every other week, sometimes once a month. We do a Millionaire morning mindset call. And so we had one 2 weeks ago. I really like it because a lot of the other calls are very like structured. This has more like journal prompts, and then we journal, and then we have a discussion around like what came up for us. And they're always so fun. But we were discussing on the call about like debt and how our society looks at debt. The number of people that I graduated with that graduated with a degree that wasn't going to pay all that well, whether it's like a teaching degree, athletic training degree, physiology degree, like, nothing that you're going to get paid huge bucks, but still came out with like 6 figures in debt is crazy. And that's a decision you're making at 18 years old. Yet if you go to take out like a line of credit for your business, people are like, well, that's dumb. Or like you put, let's say you hire a business coach and you put that on your credit card, and people are like, what are you doing? And so without even realizing it, they're expressing their relationship with money when they have that reaction. And so some of the adjustments that you have to make is like, okay, what do I believe is good debt, is bad debt, is, what are these stories that I am telling myself when it comes to relationship with money? Because money is just a vessel. That's all it is. So the first tip that I would give you when it comes to changing your relationship with money, I always talk about how you have to bring attention to something before you can bring intention to something. And so this first part is really bringing attention to the stories that you're telling yourself about money. So the first thing I did was write a letter to money. I got this tip from Jen Sincero. I first read You Are a Badass, and then she had the second book, You Are a Badass at Making Money. And that really had a lot of like aha moments for me. And if you are reading You Are a Badass at Making Money and you're reading like the first chapter and you're like, this is exactly book number 1 all over, like get through chapter number 1. Once you get to chapter 2, 3, 4, like it's like, whoa. So maybe tip 1A is read that book or read any of the other money centered books. I have a couple. I'll make sure to put them in the show notes, but I will reference them throughout this episode. But that was a very good one to start with. And from that, one of the biggest things that I did was write a letter to money. And something that came out during that process is that I have a tendency to, when there are things that stress me out, I tend to ignore them and I just pretend they don't exist. And that's what I was doing with money. I was like, I don't know how to handle money. I don't know how to save, how to spend, how to budget, how to just have a relationship with money. So I'm going to ignore it and it just will take care of itself. P.S. That's not how it works. So, but I wrote all that out. I think I still have that letter somewhere. But I just wrote about like how I'm scared because it feels like it just goes out faster than it comes in. And so I just pretend to ignore it. So why is more money going to come in if I'm just ignoring it? And really just like put words and emotions and feelings to my scarcity of money. And it just was very eye opening. So I highly, highly recommend that. Tip number 2, part of that comes from the next book that I highly recommend is We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. I recommend that book all the time. And she recently came out with a accompanying workbook, which is so good. I started diving into it on that call a week or 2 ago. And so tip number 2 is to write out all of your broke ass stories and input $1 million stories. Okay, so what does that mean? First of all, if any of that like resonates with you, go read this book. It's so good. So like one of the things is like we can be really afraid to invest in our business. And we're like, oh, I'll just figure out how to do it on my own. But it's like, I probably could change my own oil, but I'm not going to learn how to do that because that's not like time well spent. I'm just going to go pay somebody to do it. And we have to take a similar approach in our business. But again, we have to bring attention to where our mindset is with money right now. So I will read you a couple of the broke ass stories that tend to play out in my head, and then how you flip those into $1 million stories. So, broke ass story. I am not good with money. It's this very like absolute, like, oh, it's just a skill I do not have. I don't know how to do it. So I'm just going to like live into that. And the flip side is building and living in wealth is a skill I can learn and own. Again, we look at it as a skill that like something I can grow into, which I very much believe. The I am not good with money story is like very easy to play in your head over and over. And like, even, like, oh, I forgot to pay a bill and there's a late fee, so now I'm paying more. And then you just spit out like, oh, I'm not good with money. It's okay. You're learning. It's a skill. Everybody has bumps in the road when they're on the path to getting better at something. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I made a lot of mistakes. When I'm first learning how to be wealthy, I'm going to make mistakes. It's okay. The second story is that money equals greed. I think that is something that is very prominent in our society and a lot of the media that we see, especially like going to school to be a teacher, it was a very like, you're not becoming a teacher to make a bunch of money. You're becoming a teacher because you want to help. You want to do good things in the world. And so it was very much like money means that you're not a good person. And the flip side of that is that there are greedy people, whether they are rich or poor. Money can be used to amplify my kindness. And I really like that idea of like money's going to amplify whoever you are as a person, and it's not going to like change who you are as a person. And so if I truly believe and live as a kind, generous, heart-centered, service-focused person, money's going to amplify that. And another like $1 million story that kind of goes along with that is that I can't give what I don't have. I would love to give to the Harris Walls campaign. I can't give money to that campaign, which I think is going to have huge ripple effects positively for our country, not to make this like a political discussion, because there are things wrong with politics in general. But anyways, that's not a good example. I would love to give to dog shelters in the area. I can't give money to these important causes if I don't have money to give. So I think that's another way to just reframe it. Broke ass story number 3 is I will never overcome my debt. And the $1 million story is I have overcome hard things before, and this debt is going to be one of them. Those simple reframes are really powerful when you are changing your relationship, your mindset around money. And so really writing those out and figuring out what they are so that you can reframe them. Again, you have to bring attention to where your mindset is, so then you can bring intention so that when those thoughts creep into your head of like, I can't make money because that will make me greedy, of like, no, money's going to amplify who I am as a person, because that's how you intentionally change those narratives. Okay. Tip number 3, go to Money Church. I can't remember which book I read this in, but it's kind of like sprinkled in all of them. Like you have to go to Money Church every week, just show up and say like, where is money going? Where is money coming in from? Am I spending money on things that don't necessarily feel aligned? Like my North Star goal right now is to get rid of all of my credit card debt. When I first went full time, I did gather some credit card debt. And so my goal is to eliminate it. And then goal number 2 is to start saving up enough money. I want to celebrate my 40th birthday in Ireland. I want to get like a big castle thing in Ireland and have like friends and family come, whoever is able to. So step number 1 is getting rid of credit card debt. Step 2 is start saving for that trip. And having those North Star goals allows me to say like, do I need to spend money on Instacart, or can I actually go there and pick it up? And to be honest, a lot of times, like the $1 million decision is spending money on Instacart because I can do other things in the time when I'm not shopping. But it's just like, okay, how does that align with my 2 goals? I really want, oh my God, I saw this on TikTok and I just love this bag. Would I feel better paying that $80 down on my credit card bill versus having this bag? I really like the purse I have right now. I don't necessarily need this. I would feel better about putting that money towards my credit card bill. Cool. And so going to Money Church and having zero shame around how or where you're spending your money, but just bringing, again, attention to it, saying, is this aligned with where I am going financially? Yes or no? Again, no shame, no spiraling out of control around your decisions, especially if you can't change them. One of the ways that I initially showed up to Money Church too is like, use the tools that are out there. Use technology to support you. You don't have to do this all alone. Sometimes it can be an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe there are spreadsheets on like Etsy that you can buy, or free downloadables on Pinterest of like how to budget, how much of your money should you be spending where. When I first started, I was using Mint. I think Mint has now gone out of business, I believe. Another one that I've heard really good things about and I will be diving into in the next couple of weeks is called You Need a Budget. I've heard really good things about that tool, especially for entrepreneurs. The book Profit First is an amazing book for entrepreneurs, especially because another money mindset thing that we have is I'm going to pay myself last because I just have to get all the bills paid. And his mindset is you are your most valuable employee. You need to pay yourself first. If there's not enough money to pay you, you have to cut from other places. Your operations are too expensive. Your outsourcing is too expensive. Other things need to be cut before you say, I'm not going to pay myself. So Profit First is another great book. So go to Money Church every week. Again, I am pretty much making this episode for myself because it is something I need to hear right now. I need to re-engage my intention of having an abundance mindset with money. So I am going to be going back to Money Church every week. If you need an accountability person to do that, if anyone listening is like, oh, can that be something we do together on Zoom? Like co-working that I do is on Zoom and we're all doing our own thing. Some sort of accountability, let me know. We can put that together. Or if you'd like to join the Millionaire Morning Mindset calls in my group, let me know. I'd love to have you jump on a couple just to see what they're about. Okay. Tip number, what are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4 is notice when money shows up for you. Notice when you get like that positive into your bank account. Notice when those other Stripe notices come into your email. Notice when you like go into your, we're getting into fall, so we're getting back into our fall and winter jackets. Notice when you like find a $20 bill in your jacket that you put there last winter and then never took out. Or when, you find the quarter in a drawer. Like this is, again, bringing attention and intention to how money is showing up for you and really amplifying the times that it does just show up. That will start to alter your relationship where you can be like, thank you for showing up for me. Thank you for being there for me when I need it. Thank you for always coming into my life and realizing that like money's not going to just like disappear. You're never like, you always have enough. And part of why it's so important is because like money is such a huge stress. It's like one of the things that kept me from going full time into my business is I went in was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to put food on the table if I do this. And so it was very, very scary for me. And like, that's a real fear. None of what I'm saying today means like your stress about money is not real because like I get it. Like it's scary. And having that abundance mindset doesn't mean that you're like, okay, how can I make money to put food on the table? It's like not associating your enoughness with how much money you're currently making. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, Mershawn, shut up talking about money because like if I don't pay this, my electric is going to get turned off and like what the actual F, like that's real. That is a real fear. I totally hear you and see you. And I still believe that doing these things can change your relationship with money, which will have a positive impact on your life. And the last tip that I have is notice when you're associating money with badness, greediness, talking down about money or people who have money, or like, oh, this person's a bad person because they're rich. Or look at, like, again, not to make it political, but like, eat the rich. Like, yes, I don't think that they're, and maybe you'll fight me on this, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that there are ethical billionaires. Like, I think that there could be a lot more done with the people who are billionaires. than they're currently doing. They could change a lot of people's lives if they chose to do different things with their money. And that being said, if we're talking about like a CEO of a company and we're like, oh, he's so rich and so that's why he's a bad person, like that sort of storyline is going to stop you from taking action to bring in more money. Maybe you need to raise your prices, but you're like, oh my God, if I raise my prices, I'm going to be just like this person who I was just talking so much shit about. That's the narrative that we have to change. So not only notice the positive of when money is showing up for you, also notice when you're talking bad about people who have money and creating that connection. Yes. So write a letter to money, write out your broke ass stories and switch them with $1 million stories. Go to Money Church every week. Notice when money shows up for you and notice when you're associating money with negativity. And those are my tips for how to change your relationship with money. Let me know if this resonates with you. Let me know what you think. Yeah. If you want to join any of the calls in my community, please let me know. I would love to have you experience them because they are powerful. Until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.